Alexis Davis, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome.
Let's just start right out the gates. Is there any skill in particular that you've learned over the years of professional MMA, particularly those in the UFC, that has been the most valuable or most transferable to your everyday life?
Oh, wow. Wow. I just don't want to come out with the easy ones.
No, we shoot from the hip.
I would, you know what, and I'm not going to lie, it comes with a lot of patience.
Okay.
Because one, you're not going to learn the first time. And, sometimes that's life. As much as we try to learn off of our first downfall, sometimes it takes us a bit to kind of strive through.
Yeah.
And it is as well as, when you're stuck in a bad position. Hey, sometimes you just have to be patient to get out. Hey, that's, I've been through back and forth with many different, avenues that my life has taken me as well as my career. So I think it's learning, especially now that I'm kind of transitioning off to other things, just being patient and not to kind of get overwhelmed or stressed out about being in a certain position for too long. As long as I'm working towards something, working towards my escape, I know I'm going to be able to achieve.
Can you talk to us about a time that you've, in the octagon or on the mats for that matter, felt that, thought that to yourself, ended up getting out of that position or advancing or doing the thing?
It's funny. It's way back when, because I remember one of my first ever tournaments and being like stuck in a full on rear naked choke, and I'm like, can I swear on this?
Yeah,
I want to be like, fuck that. I'm not tapping. I'm getting out of this. I'm like, she's not getting this choke on me. And I was able to get out. And actually, I ended up reversing it, ended up getting her back and getting the choke. And I remember that mindset, just being like, no way, she's not getting this.
Have you willingly ever just gone out? Like if somebody had you in a choke or something, has that ever happened to you?
Willingly? No. I have been where I was like, woke up and I'm like, wow, I was having such a beautiful dream. What happened? Why is everyone standing over me? But it just happened to hit that right spot, and I was out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The specific scenario that you mentioned, was that in jiu-jitsu or MMA?
That was jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And what belt were you at that point?
That was probably had to been a blue or purple belt.
Okay.
Yeah.
So relatively early, not like too late. Okay. And how soon after you started, we'll say martial arts in general, did you start competing in martial arts?
I actually started pretty fast.
Yeah.
Mind you, back in my day, way back when, I was living in Canada, so we didn't really have as much for a competition. We had to travel far. I started in jiu-jitsu before I started anything. I actually started in Japanese jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And so I was doing tournaments back to back to back. Like it wasn't till I started getting into more of the, hey, I'm going to get punched in the face, that I kind of slowed down with that.
Can you explain Japanese jiu-jitsu for the Brazilian jiu-jitsu listeners here? What is the differences here? And I guess maybe touch on the competition too. Like if you were competing Japanese jiu-jitsu, what is the...
Relatively, competition is the same. Hey, and I did, my instructor kind of had a combination of a lot of different martial arts in his background. So our Japanese jiu-jitsu was a little bit more of a combination of a little bit of everything. Like we learned katas. Like I remember I worked with it was pretty cool, like with bow staffs and sais, but we learned a lot more judo we did, and more self-defense, like basic self-defense. And then we did do a little bit of ground game, and then we ended up kind of, as I was doing that, it kind of transitioned a little bit more when I started into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because it was mainly all ground.
Did you know that you wanted a career in MMA early on, or was that something you just kind of fell into?
Yeah, I definitely was something I kind of fell into. It wasn't popular then, especially for women. I remember seeing, as I was competing, states, like gradually it was becoming legal. Like I remember fighting on like Indian reservations and being the first ever women's fight in this place or that place. So it was kind of like I just thought to myself, hey, this is something I wanted to try. I never thought that I would get to where I was. I'm from a little town in like Canada.
Where in Canada?
The East Coast. I'm about 2 hours south of Toronto.
Okay.
I was actually
Cool.
born in Niagara Falls on the Canadian side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
What about competing and even fighting in MMA like attracted you to that? For a lot of people, that's very scary for me to think about. I've done like some very small like striking tournaments and stuff, and that no longer interests me because it hurts really bad. But just what about it like attracted you?
You know what? To be honest, it was another guy at our gym that was doing it, and he was getting ready to kind of compete. He was doing. He was a pro at the time, and I always actually, my very first class that I took was a kickboxing class. I did kickboxing for about 2 months before I jumped into jiu-jitsu, but I fell in love with jiu-jitsu. That was like, I'm like, that's my thing. And then it was just kind of supplementing into kickboxing. So I remember watching the guys spar, and they didn't have any women doing it at the time. And I was just like, you know what? I just want to try it. And I was like, I want to try it like a couple years from now. And my coach at the time was like, no, we're going to try to get you a fight like right now. But
He was just. So would you say he kind of helped propel you into the MMA competition scene?
Yeah, he definitely did. But mind you, although we had the idea that I was going to compete right away, like I said, it was few and far between that you could find fights, especially for women. And you had to travel quite a bit of distance. So it almost took me about almost a year and a half, 2 years. And I was a purple belt at the time, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt. And they say like women, we were like unicorns. Like you didn't really have like women ranked that high at the time.
Yeah.
So it was like, we felt like it was very hard, or like people were intimidated to fight me, even though I had hardly any experience other than jiu-jitsu tournaments at the time.
Okay.
Were you just sort of over that long term, especially with it being so difficult to find fights and all this kind of thing? And like you gave the example of, I don't know how far you had to travel to go to like an Indian reservation somewhere to go fight. Were you getting, so like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes, right? Like we're not usually getting paid to go to tournaments and stuff. Are you getting a purse off of these fights?
Oh. Now we're going to get into it. Yeah. My first fight, I never started amateur. I never had an amateur fight. My very first fight was pro. They didn't have amateur.
They didn't have amateur.
Straight
You just
professional fighting, just straight into it.
Right into it. I fought if you know anything about me, my very first fight was Sarah Kaufman, who I later fought 2 other times. So she was actually, 3-0 at the time. So, and we were like the main event. It was my very first fight ever. And, fortunately I did get paid for it. You got like a couple $100 or something like that. But,
right.
At the time that I was just excited to fight. I didn't care about the money.
Yeah.
Right. I think the reason I ask is because I was curious if you were looking at this as like a career move to become like a professional fighter, or if this was like, I just love fighting and I want to do it, or a mix of both, or what sort of the underlying thing was.
You know what? I can't even, to be honest, other than once I was kind of in the UFC, every other time before that, I'm like, I'm just here to have fun. Little town, like I said, you didn't expect to be, or even to see how much the sport has grown since then. So it was really just, I don't know, it was a great hobby that you got paid for.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's cool. I think a lot of people, especially those who watch or follow the UFC, kind of fantasize about going pro. You hear a lot of like armchair commentary, he should do this or they should do that or whatever that is. But what's something that you learned that the general public might be surprised by or wouldn't know about professional MMA?
I'm sorry to say, but like, as good as you are, sometimes it's about having just the right connections. Because there's so many I have come across, and I'm sure you guys have too, in the jiu-jitsu community, even like so many great athletes that just never got the shot.
Yeah.
You have to, mind you, it comes a lot with sacrifice. Truly, it does. Like you don't. If you really want to be on top, you don't have a life.
Right.
You don't have a life. You're not hanging out with your friends or your family. You know, it's hard a lot when you have kids, and you know, just to put all that time in. But you can put that time in and not end up going anywhere. That's the hard part. That's the heartbreaking thing.
Yeah.
Just so unknown, right? Yeah, that's the question I wonder too, even for like that conversation is pretty big right now too in like the jiu-jitsu community. People, I guess, because like recently, especially with all these pro athletes like the Gordon Ryans and the B team guys, all these athletes are coming more to the forefront of like the martial arts sort of scene. And yeah, I guess in jiu-jitsu, everybody wants like everybody who loves it just wants to like make a career out of it. And it's like what are the paths to do that? Like if you want to be a pro athlete, kind of what you're saying is it seems like there's just a huge unknown. Like you might work super hard and not even get the shot to do it.
Well, we have like the resistance mainly Muay Thai gym, but we have a lot of great athletes, and a lot of the problem is everyone's like, well, you know, you have so many fights, why aren't you going pro? But sometimes it's like, I can't get a pro fight.
Right.
You know, I can't get somebody who's going to even give me that opportunity. You know, I've seen guys that have been fighting pro and they're doing great. Every fight that they have, I have a guy who's gone, I think he's going to be on his like getting his like 5th title or something ridiculous. And they're like, why aren't you in the UFC? He just hasn't got that call, hasn't got that opportunity. And, you know, that's everyone's dream, you know, to do something that we love and to be able to get paid for it. I'm like this, but it's not as easy. It's the business side of things.
What would you say to somebody who's interested in that then? If it's so out of somebody's control, for example, if you don't have the connections, what is it that you should be aiming at then as
Networking.
Networking.
It's a business decision.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Got to be a business person. Cool.
There is like you have to, which I'm completely horrible at, and I just had to talk about this morning. Like, your social media, you have to sell yourself. You know, it's obviously you got to pick and choose how you want to represent yourself, but you have to get out there and talk to people, go to events. You know, being able to network and get different avenues of different people that you can speak to in regards to, you know, obviously what your goal is to achieve.
Right. It's relationship building.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Got it. And really just putting yourself out there. Because I guess it almost sounds like you're saying you can be the most talented fighter there is. And if nobody knows you exist.
Yeah. Especially nowadays, like social networking, like being on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is. Do you guys have a TikTok?
We have a TikTok.
Not on purpose.
Yeah, it's just there as it's an auxiliary thing.
That's how I started Instagram. I'm like, I'm horrible at Instagram.
Yeah.
But it's something you had to do.
Yeah,
I remember when I was first with Strike Force, they had, if you got so many followers, you got a bonus.
Oh, dang.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get on this. I'm going to make sure I try to get more followers and try to promote myself a little bit more.
Interesting. So they're like incentivizing this self-promotional behavior because it also attracts an audience to Strike Force.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It helps them too.
Right.
You know, the more their fighters are known, the more, you know, obviously being Strike Force is going to be known at the time.
Right.
Could you talk to us about the call to the UFC? When did that happen? What did that feel like? What were your initial thoughts? Obviously that was part of your goal. I mean, I know you said you kind of stumbled into it, but like at a certain point you had to have been like, UFC would be cool.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of like not, you know, probably not as exciting as some of the other guys, but at the time I was in Strike Force. Now that was pretty cool to be a part of because they were like the first event to have women.
Okay.
Huge, you know, well publicized event to have women. So I was actually I was three fights in with Strike Force.
Okay.
And then Strike Force ended up getting bought out by Zuffa.
Okay.
So we were kind of sitting there for a while being like, probably the same feeling as a lot of the fighters right now with Bellator and PFL. I mean, like, well, what are they going to do with us? Are we cut? Are they going to transfer us over? And, you know, luckily enough, you know, Dana White said, yeah, we're going to take all the women that Strikeforce has and bring them over. So, and start a whole new women's division.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very cool.
So that was like few people know. It was the few of us from Strikeforce. We were, it was myself. We had Misha Tate, obviously Ronda Rousey, Kat Zingano, and Sarah McMahon were the first ever women's technically signed with the UFC.
Cool. Very cool.
Y'all were at the ground floor of the like breaking into the UFC. Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
This is after you beat Amanda Nunes.
Yeah.
Which I looked up, and that was cool. There's not many people who can say that, I feel.
No.
On
my bucket list.
Very cool. What changed for you after that happened? I mean, UFC acquires Strikeforce. Talk to us about what changed from either from a preparation perspective, financial perspective, networking perspective, any of those things.
Financial, not as much as I would have liked, to be honest. You know, obviously later, you know, was fortunate to be with UFC here for, I think, around 10 years. So later on, things got a lot better. But, you know, compared to what our $100 we made off of that first fight, it was, you know, I'm like, this is great for something that I never, you know, I don't want to say didn't want to get into, but never really thought I could, you know, something that I did for a hobby. But the hard part was just how many friends you think you have.
Okay.
You know, that was the hard part. That was the hard part when I was fighting for the title. You know, everyone wanted to be your best friend.
Right.
Everyone who you think has your best interest at heart. But, you know, later on down that road, you kind of feel like, oh, you know, if they're not getting something out of it, you know, it's, I think that's probably the hardest part is once you do make it is, you know, being in line with the people who were there kind of from the beginning and helped you grow.
Right.
And knowing how to filter people out.
Right. I hear that a lot about people who achieve some level of recognition in like any industry, really, right? Like artists, UFC fighters, they talk about those like day one friends they had and always going back to that. And they tell these stories about, people just being around them if it, or those people being around you if it like benefits them somehow. For like a pro athlete though, like what are some of those ways that, if you want to get into it, what are some of those ways that people, I guess, are around you for their benefit? What are they trying to get out of you?
I don't know, just recognitions. And mind you, I've dated people that are like, I'm like, later on, I'm like, I think they're only dating me because I'm a, you know, UFC fighter. I've actually had relationships like that almost like you felt that they were trying to sell your image for their own benefits.
Oh, they want to be, they see like a star face and they're like, oh, look who I'm connected to.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm just here for...
That's too bad.
Okay.
Yeah, comes in all parts of life.
Yeah. What about from a strength and conditioning perspective? Were there any differences from like the way you approached competition or fights for pre-UFC versus after UFC?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. I wish I could show you two different pictures before and after. Just like back then, you didn't even understand what, you know, really came into tune with not just, you know, obviously you're building your strength and your endurance, but just taking care of yourself.
Right.
You know, being able to do things properly. Okay, I'm lifting this day, but what am I doing for recovery after? And especially now, as I get older, you kind of definitely start to feel it where you have to take that time to put aside for yourself for your recovery. As much as I'm trying to build muscle, I'm trying to being able to perform to my best abilities. But the first time I tore my knee, my strength and conditioning coach was like, you need to take the next day off. You're overtraining. And I didn't listen. Sorry, Mark. I didn't listen. But that was the thing. I thought you had to train every day, all the time, all day. Want to be the best in the world and just nonstop go, go, go. And no, that's the price you pay and I think that came a lot with like growing through the sport. I think a lot of people kind of become like that, and it's not really become to focus.
I don't think it's set focused now. It's still like finding its way, I feel.
Yeah, it's like that everyday pohada.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it later. Or, I have to become this ultimate athlete who, what's my favorite saying? If that day that you're not in the gym, your opponent's in the gym.
Yeah, that
that can be insidious. But it does feel.
It's like a motivational the first time. But if you, I feel like, actually, I want to ask you the question: if you're constantly like outwardly focused on, or at least I feel like because I compete sometimes, and I feel like if I'm outwardly focused on trying to train. To like, if I'm thinking about these people that I'm going to be fighting, it's like taking away something from me. I feel like.
Yeah, you know what? My favorite, I think I performed at my best was when like I have taken fights on like without as okay, I know who my opponent is. And I used to do this like quite a bit later on. I know who my opponent is, but I am not. And, it works different for everybody else, but I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to dwell on who they are and what are they doing or, I got hit with this technique or I got hit with this choke and they're really good at it. I'm going to lose. And that plays too much into your mental side, where I tried to leave a lot of it actually up to my coaches, being kind of give me more directions of what things that I can do. But some people, it works for them to get hyper-focused and watching their opponent every day up until it's almost an obsession. But that never worked for me because I felt the same. Like I get too focused and I'd be playing with myself too much mentally.
Right. We talked about this with Tamara. Have you met Tamara? Yeah. We talked about this with her a couple weeks ago, and we talked about like not getting so focused on your opponent that you lose sight of your own goals, because it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're just like, watch out for this, watch out for that, watch out for this, watch out for that. Next thing you know, it's happening and you're like, oh shit, what I tried everything I could to avoid this. And in trying to avoid it, you end up kind of manifesting it.
Yeah, you work so hard to prevent something. Like, you know what, I'm not gonna do it. And then before too long, it's I've come across it the other way too, almost where I'm like a lot like I'm gonna shoot. Oh, there goes my opportunity. I missed it because I was thinking about it too much, waiting for that perfect time where sometimes you just gotta go. And I feel like that was one of my biggest like pitfalls into the sport was I'm an overthinker.
Okay. The mental side.
Yeah. I even while I'm competing, I'm like thinking about things too much, when my best times have been when I just stop. You just react and you just move.
Flow state.
Yes, exactly.
That's something that I and I think Josh can probably identify with this too, but like when I go to compete, I don't like to watch before. I go off to the side, because if I watch, I start thinking about all the things that I want to do. And in reality, there are so many possibilities. Focusing on any one branch of that massive tree, you become blind to everything else. And then, like you said, you miss your opportunity. And next thing you know, you're in a position that you didn't want to be in or expect to be in. So.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the benefits of just flow rolling or flow sparring is like, especially if you can have a great partner, just stop, turn it off, and just kind of move without
thinking, right?
Of getting hurt, or we're gonna get into a bad position, but how to move and kind of flow out of it. And I think it's actually something that's really hard for some of these guys to learn. Yeah, I know I've tried to get some of these guys. I'm like, just move, just relax, don't focus on getting the submission. I just want you to work on transitions and transferring your weight and kind of flow with the person you're with. It's a dance.
Yeah.
I have I guess a question for you on that. Because I started with Muay Thai originally. I did that for a while, and I noticed whenever we would spar, we would play a lot, and it would be because I guess with striking, we can't just be like pounding each other in the face every day. And so I guess do you see a transference of, I guess when you look at like striking and grappling, do you see any similarities between like how we might flow and play and the striking and how we can bring that over to jiu-jitsu? Is it the same thing at all or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And actually kind of funny is like I teach jiu-jitsu at mainly a Muay Thai school, and being able to I kind of translate to each other. Okay, creating angles. Okay, we need to create angles by stepping off and moving in Muay Thai, but we also need angles in jiu-jitsu and the use of our hips, So kind of in that sense, as well as to be like, okay, sometimes we need to set things up, or we need to flow into this before we can kind of react. And just like kind of your explosiveness in jiu-jitsu, so you can't just sit there and always grind things out all the time. You kind of have to flow, move, feel their movement, feel how they're going to move before you can react and look for something.
Right.
Got it. So really like feeling what your opponent is doing as opposed to, or not your opponent, but your training partner, what they're doing, so that you can, I guess, so you can figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah. It's, we have Eddie Abasolo, who fights for one, big time Muay Thai guy, and we'll kind of bounce things off with each other. Like if I go into his Muay Thai class and he's like, well, it's kind of like jiu-jitsu and you have to kind of move like this. And I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of see it. They all everything kind of relates to each other in the same way. Speaking about like being on the ground or different things that we have to transition to at top, a lot of the same things can, and movement wise in a sense, can kind of relate to each other.
Yeah. Cool. I want to circle back to the mental side of things. Is there something that you maybe learned late in your career that you would have done differently, or are there any resources that you would recommend people try if they were going to try to improve the mental side of their game?
Oh, the mental side. I think a lot of it is, it's actually, I recommend just like speaking to, especially if it's something that you struggle with, where I've seen a lot of people benefit from, is speaking like to a sports.
Like a sports psychologist?
Yeah.
Do you know Erin Hurley?
Mm-mm.
She's a black belt. She actually splits time between Niagara Falls and like the Canadian side and LA, I think. The Canadian side. Just want to clarify. Anyways, former black belt competitor. She used to compete with like Christina Barlon, and like she was kind of that level.
Yes.
And she's become a sports psychologist now. Her company's called Train Your Mind. And she's brilliant. Like she works with a lot of the athletes that we train with, and a lot of the athletes that I train at my strength and conditioning gym. And a lot of people talk about the the benefits that she's helped them figure out. She's helped them figure out the mental side of the game. So I think that's pertinent information, right? Like learning to speak with somebody and talk about those things. Yes,
and someone who you feel comfortable with, and you have to be open about yourself, like, because this sport is so hard. Any sport that you're trying to commit yourself to, it's beyond physical. It's even within the realm of us competing, it's a lot of it is the mental side of it. Like we have to be able to see things and break things down mentally before we can react physically.
Right. Did you end up working with a sports psychologist after you transitioned to the UFC?
Unfortunately, it wasn't until later on.
Okay.
It was actually talking to and speaking with, she worked a lot. Actually, I'm going to definitely label myself Canadian. She worked a lot with hockey players.
Who was it?
Kind
Do you mind me
of
asking?
in that sense, she's like a through like Canadian sports broadcasting now, but
Okay.
and I wish I kind of would have pursued that a lot more
Okay.
at the time, and especially like, we have so many outside influences that we have to adjust ourselves to, so many things that happen in life, divorce, with dealing with moving or finances, where you're going to have so much other pressures that are going to be mentally, obviously causing a lot of effect and
Right.
draining on you.
Right.
That it's hard to stay focused on to what your ultimate goal is.
Right. It sounds like you need that holistic approach. Really talk to somebody about, it's not just the sport. Like there's other things that contribute to success or failure in any given realm.
And I really do. I recommend it to any athlete who is trying to get to that next level, or who's in that next level and doesn't know quite how to maintain it or even take the next one.
From a practical perspective, was there, I guess, before and after you started seeing this person, was there anything that you were able to bring into, I guess, either your training or matches, or any I guess actual practical things that can help you in the moment? For example, for me, there's like some breathing exercises I do sometimes. I was wondering if there's anything like that for you.
Similar a lot to that. Well, it's almost breathing in the same sense, just like that meditation of just trying to take that time and throughout your day, not necessarily before a competition, but to do this daily, of just trying to just let things breathe, just let things kind of let go. Try not, it's so hard to do it, and I recommend it for anybody. Just try not to think of anything. And then we start thinking of, okay, I'm going to start thinking of not thinking about anything. It's a whole other mental side of things.
Yeah.
You kind of just focus on your breathing, your inhale, your exhale, and try to just, almost in that flow state, you're floating.
Yeah.
Did you like I guess, going into, I guess, fights or matches or anything related to competition, mentally, what are you thinking before you're going in there? And did that change at all before and after you talk to this person?
Yes. And I wish I would have, because I ended up, especially kind of later as things kind of went on we didn't quite talk as much, and where I think that kind of would have improved a lot, because one of my biggest downfalls, obviously I said, like being an overthinker, and that played a lot into helping me, because before I compete, I'm visualizing, everyone says visualize, but I'm visualizing everything to a sense where it's kind of playing into how much I'm going to move, or, what I'm going to be able to be focusing on, instead of being in that, we were saying, flow state where you're just kind of moving. So I think that helped a lot with the breathing exercises, and trying to, especially pre-competition, of trying to just almost let things kind of just go and air out, and just be focused on yourself.
Did you ever listen to Lex Friedman podcast?
No.
He does he has an episode with Roger Gracie. He talks about the second Buchecha fight after he'd like been in retirement for several years, and he asked him about that, like what goes through your mind? Like, are you thinking? Are you imagining how you're gonna like beat him? No, there's nothing there. He was like, just quiet. Just know he does not like thinking about anything he's gonna do during the match. That all that preparation is done. Then when he gets to the venue, it's like time to be quiet and just let things happen. Like react, or feel what's going on, and do the thing that you're supposed to do to get where you want to go, without trying to groove the pattern before it's even there.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
You said it much better than I. Just trying to find the quiet.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say that's fascinating, because I see like at all these tournaments, people have all these different ways of approaching it. Like standing in the bullpen, there's people trying to hype themselves up. There's people, I don't know, all of these, there's so many different ways of handling it.
I read. I literally like go and read.
I
And just
actually
like, I'm just like, I don't want to think about this.
try to lay down and just like almost
Yeah.
like have a nap. Just
Yeah.
Oh, you're
in a
just
sense,
feeling.
just try to like lay there and just be still.
Yeah. 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 It's so interesting to me because, yeah, everything is rooted in like this fear and like I get scared when I'm in the bullpen, right? Like we're about to go.
Hey, if
Go
you're
fight
not
people.
not getting scared before you're competing, then you don't love it anymore.
Right.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting that like, instead of trying to figure out how to do all of these different things to like hype yourself up and all this kind of stuff, you're really just trying to achieve this state of almost like relaxation in a way. Are you trying to, so you want this sort of mental relaxation? Are you also getting physically warmed up?
Yes.
How do
well,
those
I
play
kind of break
together?
it down.
Okay.
I kind of, obviously, like I don't know, we have to get there so early before, but once it's time to warm up, it's in the same sense mentally, but moving physically, that we're still trying to structure our body, and especially like you have to be able to flow and get your blood flowing and movement before you end up competing, but it's still trying to take that same, and I think that's more of, for me, how I benefit from it a lot too, was being able to have that time beforehand to kind of do it with, like I said, I like to lay down, kind of close my eyes and kind of trying to meditate. It's kind of, I'm going to take that same feeling into now, okay, now I'm starting my movement. And as like for MMA, for us, it's kind of like we're gradual. Okay, you kind of start off warming up slow until you kind of get into the point where you're starting to kind of really, crack the pads, or you're trying to push through submissions. And then, okay, my body's there. I'm kind of gradually bringing my mental side to it as well before I can walk out into the octagon or to whatever I am doing.
Sounds like you're building this progression of
Yes.
this flow state almost, where you hit this sort of optimal peak where your body is, where you're feeling that flow. Like you're not only like mentally feeling that, but your body's also just now moving and reacting, and you're able to maintain that calm and still hit the pads hard. And but you're just is that
Yes, exactly.
How long does that last? Like how long from the start of your warm up to from the start of your warm up to the time you hit the octagon? How long is that?
To be honest, it's usually actually like a couple hours.
Okay.
Like when we go to fight, we're there a few hours beforehand.
Okay.
And then that's why you have to, like, I almost in a sense, I hate when I just have to like go out and move and you don't have, and though there's benefits to it too. Like I've had times where like you didn't have that time, but then you don't have that time to overthink about everything as
Right.
well. So
Yeah, that's almost fun sometimes. Yeah, when you said that the first time about like not knowing who your opponent was, so like way later, it's kind of nice. It's almost freeing in a way. It seems like, because you just because you're so focused on what you're doing and yourself that you don't have time to worry about this person or
yeah.
you know.
I'm not going to worry about, okay, they're really good at, doing this choke or this, heel hook or something like that. Every time I get caught, oh no, I would have lost the fight if I was in the fight.
Right.
I've been in times like that too, where I'm like, oh, every time I got hit with that submission, I know they're good at it. I'm going to lose this fight. And then, it's just, all downhill after that when you start to get in that frame of mind.
Right. So we talked about like the warm up leading up to, what's the very last thing to go through your head right before you step into the octagon?
It's something usually simple, like, okay, like just worrying about, sometimes it's as basic as like, okay, like the word legs. Okay, because legs means, keep myself grounded and think about my stance. It's not a particular move or one thing that I want to do. It's usually based on, like my stance. Or it's even as simple as, okay, I'm hand up, keep my hand up. I know I gotta, just something as easy as that. Nothing.
So it's more general, like a general.
Yeah, I'm not gonna think, okay, I need to throw my, double jab into a shot or something.
Okay.
Or,
Almost like these cues to yourself. It's a really simple keyword, I think, and it prompts you to sort of behave in that way almost.
And I try to use that word kind of throughout my, like, legs is probably one like of my favorite, just thinking about my stance. And I try to use that throughout my camp, and almost using that same word to, as if I do get to a point in the fight where, you know, things are kind of, you know, maybe not going as much as I can, or, you know, I'm starting to, you know, hyper focus on one thing, you know, just that kind of brings me back. Okay, I'm going to start thinking, okay, I got to go back and, okay, am I in the stance? You know, in my right stance? Yeah.
It sort of grounds you back to like, yeah, okay.
Have either of you read Legacy by James Kerr? That's a really good book on this. It's about the All Blacks, the rugby team from New Zealand, and they talk about keeping a blue head. So like rugby's obviously there's some tensions can flare, right? And you know, they talk about whenever things aren't going the way that they want, they each have their own little cue, whatever that is, whether that's tapping their right toe in their boot, or, you know, splashing water on their face, or like for hockey goalies a lot, they'll like allow a goal, they'll like toss some water in the air and then watch one drop all the way to the ground, right? Something like that, just to like bring them back to the spot. So I think that's really sound advice, right? Just like having something, whatever that is, whether it's saying legs or one of the many things that you could do to ground yourself. I think that's a really good idea.
Is that based on, and you said you carry that all the way through your training, and then all the way, like even mid-fight, you'll be like, okay.
Well, just so I have that, I have to start to kind of build it throughout your training camp, so you can kind of use that to help put you back into your own mental grounding.
Right.
Do you find that when you bring those cues back and you go to that more grounded state, does that help put you back in that flow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I want to use it for something to be like, okay, kind of like wake me up, take that steps back, you know, almost like mentally, okay, breathe.
Yeah.
Sometimes we all forget to breathe.
Yeah.
Right.
And then kind of refocus on where I am.
Yeah.
Got it. There's that book. Have you read Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin?
Oh, I've actually read some of that. Yeah.
Have you? Okay. Yeah. I just finished it. I guess somehow it started getting popular right now. I think because it was on a podcast or something. But, he mentioned something about like building. I'm gonna mess this up completely, but he talks about like building these cues to yourself before competition. But I guess just anybody listening to this, you go read The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. He does sort of expand on this concept you're talking about, and he actually puts it into like this system where if people aren't just doing this like naturally, like you just kind of do it organically. It sounds like it just kind of comes up, and you know that works for you. He almost systematizes it. So if anybody listening is interested in that, Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin.
It's good too, especially if you have like a trusted coach or someone with who you can, you know, communicate obviously things to, but that they can kind of focus you back into that. I've had them, you know, coaches like just give me those cue words to kind of be like, okay. To me, my best thought behind it is almost just to breathe, as much as we are breathing, but just to mentally breathe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. We take a breath.
Yeah. How has retirement from professional MMA changed the way you enjoy BJJ or other martial arts?
It's hard. That retirement word is.
Are you retired? Are you officially retired, or are you still?
You know, it's hard. I actually got 2 offers actually the last few months, and
Let's go.
I actually got offered a jiu-jitsu fight, and then I got offered just as of recently an MMA. But it's got to be something that, you know, that's really got to like spark my interest. I've kind of started to gravitate towards, you know, more stability in my life. It's hard. It's, as much as everybody wants to compete, but it's hard. There's not a lot of stability behind it between, you know, there's no 401k. There's no, you know, especially when you have kids or you have somebody else you're looking after.
Right.
So it's definitely.
I apologize if I got a little head. I
No.
wasn't sure if you were. it was
you trying to call me
officially
old? Is
no,
that
no,
what-
no, 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 no.
No, that's something that's come up a lot, and
Okay.
I even with myself, like I'm talking with my manager. He's like, "Well, so are we retired?" I'm like, I don't want to say that yet.
Right.
You
Okay.
know, I don't. Yeah, I actually just was talking with a friend of mine who she recently, and I'm like, doesn't it feel like just anytime that we say no to it, like a little part of you kind of dies inside. But I'm also like enjoying it as well. You know, I'm focused. I started going back to school, and now I'm helping coach the next generation and try to get them to the opportunities where they can live their dreams, become to what they want to be. And even with my son, trying to take more, because it's a very selfish sport. You have to be in order to succeed. So now I have that time where we can go do things and get him into different sports and things like that as well. If someone tempted me enough, I can't say that I wouldn't take it. But I don't want to say tired yet.
Fair enough.
That sounds like a very like cut and dry decision, right?
Yeah.
And you don't need to make that decision,
Right.
either,
Fair enough. Well, again,
and back to like even with just enjoying more, like when I love coming out to coyotes, like that's I put that time aside for myself, and to just not have that extra anxiety and stress of, hey, I'm here because I have something coming up, or when getting that thought in your mind anytime, like when you get stuck in a bad position, like, well, this happens in my fight. I'm just having fun with it. I'm like, hey, what are you working on? Are you working on your bottom game? I love helping people. It's something I like to do, and I don't got to worry about anything like that. But I'm going to tell you, to be honest, the best thing in the world is that, and this probably sounds horrible, but in my mind, but I haven't stepped on a scale in like 6 months. It's beautiful.
That's fantastic.
It's beautiful.
Good for you.
Because oh my God, I've probably competed for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And having to worry about your weight constantly, enough that I still work out and I enjoy how I look and how I feel, as long as I have that. But to see a number and to having to worry about it, how many times have we, maybe we start lifting a little bit more and we get stressed because we put on weight. It's not necessarily bad weight, but, or I'm like, hey, you think I can make it down to 125 by this time? I can't enjoy my son's birthday party, or, Christmas or Thanksgiving is coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a psychological toll that comes with that.
And we all like, even now I'd be like, I don't even like to say it. I feel like it's more of a swear word than a swear word, but to be like, hey, oh man, I'm fat right now. And I'm like, and on the outside, someone will look at me like, man, you're crazy. I'm like, you look in great shape. But I say we're fighter fat. We're, we all have that body dysmorphia where we have to have a six pack constantly, where to the average person, they're like, man, you look incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had just a small taste of this, cause I've been kind of competing for the past year and a half or so. And it's always just like, I've only done a couple like really hard cuts, but it's always just like, I got to make weight, right? You can't compete if you don't make weight. And then I'm sure even for these, I've seen a lot of these stories about UFC fighters in particular, really hard cuts for these fights.
Did you injure themselves even? Right? Like,
yeah. Have you had any of those types of hard cuts that you experienced?
Yeah. Well, my first one that comes into mind was my very first time cutting 125. And this was still back when I lived in Canada. I actually passed out a few times, like where my coach had to like catch me. Mind you, that came into a lot of playing where we didn't know how to do things right. We didn't know how to, properly cut or how to eat right, or we were just kind of sitting there trying to sweat everything out in the sauna. And later came So I did 125 back then, and through the UFC, I did 3 fights at 125. First cut was easy. Threw sauna suit on, did a couple rounds of pads, that I was on it. And I swear, I don't know if it was a mental thing or I just, after my fight, enjoyed myself too much. But the next cut, it was like, oh, okay, it's a little bit harder now. I maybe got too cocky with the first one, and had to sit in the sauna for a little bit, did the pad work and everything, and a little bit more draining. And then my last one was the hardest. I had to cut with already running and elliptical bike and pad work and everything with the sauna suit on, and then having to step in the sauna, and especially as a female, having to cut an additional over 10 pounds in the sauna after that.
That's brutal.
That was horrible.
Yeah. I mean, there are a ton of things that come along with that.
Your performance, for one.
Yeah. The thing I always tell people, like, as a strength and conditioning coach, like, I don't really recommend anybody cut. Because you need fuel. Like, you need water for several reasons: kidney function, hormones, musculoskeletal injuries go way up if you're dehydrated, concussions, all kinds of things. And especially in MMA, like, where you're getting hit in the head, that can be detrimental, right? Long term. But it's you mentioned the first one was easy. Second one was a little harder. Third one gets harder. And there are things that happen to your metabolism when you're like cycling up and down a lot that are troublesome and in the long term. And it sounds like you experience that. That, like, your metabolism doesn't always speed back up. Like, it stays kind of where it's at. So it just becomes harder every time, until you just kind of run yourself into the ground. And that, it sounds like you experience that in that third cut
now. And as we get older, it doesn't make it any easier. Last year I did a Muay Thai tournament, and obviously tournaments are a little bit hard because you have to make weight multiple times. But even I was like, I used to walk around like super light. Was walking around like 140s, 142, and then this tournament I fought at 142, and I'm like, damn, this is a lot of work right now. Like, like, I didn't have to do at least like a whole sauna cut or anything like that, but I'm like, this weight used to come off so much easier than what before. But like I said, like 20 years of weight cuts, that it can't be good for you.
No,
and you look at some of the, I hate to say it because I feel like everyone does, but like with wrestlers and how much that they cut.
Yeah, that's another level. I feel like it's I don't know if I could even comment on that. Like, it's and I think it's just so prevalent in sports with a weight class: jiu-jitsu, MMA, wrestling, whatever it is. So, I think there are a couple things to touch on from a long term. Like, for the long term, I think you're right. It's not good for you. Like, it just can't be. Second, bodies change. That's okay. Everybody's body changes throughout their lives. We grow up and we grow old and things happen, and that's okay. It's the psychological part that I think is the most overlooked. It seems like a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes that I've talked to all admit to the body image issues that come with it, but don't either know how to address it or what to do about it. They're just like, well, we all just have body image issues, and that's just part of it. I'm like, well, does it have to be? So I don't know. I think there's so much stress that's involved in, and you touched on it earlier, competing in general, competing specifically in MMA, the people, all the things that kind of play into this whole sport, or even the business at large. Adding the stress on top of it, number one, to make weight in the first place, and number two, the more than likely chance that you binge afterwards. And just all of it is just like it's so heavy, and it, like, mentally speaking, psychologically speaking, I think if everybody just collectively agreed, be like, we don't really have to do it this way, it would fix a lot of problems. And so
But we know that's never going to happen.
Right, right.
There's
It's-
always going to be one person think, I can get one up on somebody.
right.
Are you guys familiar with? I know you guys are jiu-jitsu guys, but One Championship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or with actually, I did this in California too. Even when I fought in Fresno for the UFC. How they deal with weight cuts?
Yeah, I've heard they make you test, right? Like you have to
hydration.
Yeah.
They check. Yeah, when I fought, and obviously, I'm sure you can find ways around it. But when I fought in California, I think like every month or every couple weeks or so, or randomly, they would make you take your phone, record you live, and step on the scale and see where your weight is, so you couldn't be too far off from what you were fighting at. And then they did the whole, God, I can't remember what it's called. But they did like to check to make sure, like with like a lot of the concussion tests, they did like a whole like testing system, both mentally and physically after your weight cut. And like, I like a lot how with how they do, okay, you have to make weight, but you also have to pass the hydration test. So you can't deplete yourself that much.
Right. I mean, there's been people who've died doing that.
Yeah.
Right. Which is troublesome to say the least. And not a lot of people know that, like, Dan Cormier missed the 2008 Olympics because of kidney failure because he tried to cut too much weight.
Yeah.
Mostly through dehydration, which is obviously a huge problem. So, anyways, without getting too much in the weeds, we are about to go on hot takes. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. Josh is something.
Like a little bit of pressure here.
No. Josh is something of a artiste. Yeah. 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 We won't sing it live. We'll spare your ears. So the way hot takes works is I'm going to give you a topic and then Josh will man the timer. You have 20 seconds to give us your opinion. There's no right or wrong answer. Just whatever comes to your mind first, free association, however you want to respond.
All right.
Sound good?
Nothing too difficult.
No, I don't think
Next.
so. Okay.
Oh yeah, feel free to say next.
Yeah, if you don't like one,
the question.
yeah, you can totally you can pass. I can edit everything out. So, anyways, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Hot takes.
Hot takes. Who has the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC right now and all time?
Go.
Ooh, Ryan Hall.
Ryan Hall right now and all time?
Is he still in right now?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Good question.
Okay, but so all time, Ryan Hall?
I'm
Sticking with your answer? Well, you got it now because you answered 20 seconds.
Ryan Hall, you heard it here first. Okay.
He's pretty good. I heard he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's not too shabby.
He's all right.
Okay.
I might be a little biased because I trained with him.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Who pulls off like
Like Imanari
That's
roll
wild.
that he did or whatever.
Yeah.
that's crazy.
not so great with the striking part of it.
Jiu-jitsu.
Okay, second one. Jiu-jitsu and MMA. Does it work? Derek Lewis says, just stand up.
Go.
Yes. If you know how to do it properly, how to set it up, it's the end game right there.
Cool.
Jiu-jitsu is the end game.
The end game.
Yeah,
I like that.
you can set it up.
Yeah.
They're done.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. You heard it, Derek Lewis. Okay. Steroids in the UFC. Does it happen? If so, how much? Should it be legal?
Go.
No, it shouldn't be legal. And yes, I imagine it does happen. In any sport, everybody finds a way.
Succinct.
Yeah. A follow-up question there. What if everybody agreed that you could do steroids?
I don't want to do steroids.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Fair.
All right.
All right,
I don't
20
think
seconds.
I don't think everybody wants to.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay. This one may or may not make the final cut. Dana White.
Go.
I actually like Dana White. You know what? Sorry, over 20 seconds, but when my niece was diagnosed with cancer, he was really supportive and helped my family out. So sorry, can't do anything wrong for me for Dana White.
Hey,
Yeah.
it's your opinion, and
Yeah.
I have no problem. So
That was beautiful. 20 seconds.
very good. Okay. Gi or no gi?
Oh.
Go.
I train more no gi, but I love the gi so much more. There's a beautiful aspect behind the gi, the technique behind it, the different positions you can get into. I'm where I started was the gi. Still love it.
Cool.
Gi in the UFC.
Like when they first started,
Specifically, gi top and shorts.
That sounds like Sambo. All right, 20 seconds.
Okay, last one. Who's the coolest athlete you ever met on the UFC roster and why?
Go.
Oh my God, coolest athlete. Man, God, I don't know. Justin Ortiz, only because he's my buddy. Yeah.
Here we go.
Cool. Very cool.
I probably could think of a lot more there, but
That's okay. I mean, we ask because,
John Jones used to be really cool. I met him like when he first started in the UFC.
yeah.
I don't know, the stuff I see nowadays. I'm like, I got a picture of John Jones lifting me up when I used to fight in Niagara Falls. He's like holding me up like this, and we were pointing at a taxi cab that had my face on it.
That's cool.
Oh, that's dope.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you have that picture? Can you send it to us?
It's probably somewhere.
All right. if you find the time, don't
Throw it up on this.
Yeah. That's really cool. Okay, cool. Let's leave it there before we head out. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Alexis Davis MMA. Sorry, I don't have a TikTok, but Twitter, same thing. And I'm trying, guys. I'm trying to get on there.
On Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I forgot it's not even Twitter anymore.
Yeah.
I refuse.
So much I go on. I don't know.
I can't call it X.
I refuse to call it X. I won't do it.
It is still Twitter.
Yeah, it'll always be Twitter to me. Very cool. Okay, well, thanks for listening to another episode, everyone. If you enjoy this podcast, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us at Thanks for the Roll on Instagram and TikTok, where you won't find Alexis. Give us 5 stars and write us a review wherever you listen, and share this episode with someone you think would benefit from it. See you next time. Thanks for the roll.
Thanks for the roll.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, cool. Good job.